from imperialism at its worst. So my task is to talk about what is happening in the world. So bear with me, I will try to keep to my time, and I hope I will be clear in my enunciation. So the 21st century, which is now the era of highest state of imperialism, has for all its 3 decades witnessed violent economic policies being thrust on society, with the workers and peasants forced into many forms of callous atrocities, including hunger, poverty, and exploitation. Yeah, this is much better. Thank you so much. But imperialist projects do not stop at severe economic exploitation. They are accompanied with devastating wars and bloodshed. The latest is the ongoing genocide in Palestine, in occupied Palestine. But history tells us that all this is not new. And we have battled against colonialism, neo-colonialism, capitalism, feudalism, and apartheid over the past centuries. The history of women is rich, broadcasting their courage and steadfastness in fighting for their land, their liberation. From grotesque structures of militarism, enslavement, and of course patriarchy. This is true for every colonized continent, whether it be Latin America, Africa, or Asia Pacific. Of the many fierce freedom fighters, women rights defenders, I will mention a mere handful here. Carlota, a revolutionary African woman, was in the forefront of slave uprisings in Cuba in the late 1800s, and in the same period we had Elma Francois, I don't know how to say, who fought for and was committed to the liberation of African people in a pan-Caribbean, pan-African struggle. Similarly, in Latin America, we have Juana Padilla, who is a guerrilla leader from Ticoasca, which is now Sucre, the capital of Bolivia. She fought for independence from Spanish rule and the rights of the indigenous people of Upper Peru. She led the Royal Battalions, which was a battalion of 6,000 soldiers. We have among us still living, like Teodora Gomes, who joined the armed struggle being fought by Amilcar Cabral for the independence of Guinea-Bissau in the 1960s. And to this day, she has stood up for the liberation of women. Even though she has vociferously fought patriarchy, she has a very clear enunciation on liberation struggles. I quote, "First of all, women must fight together with men against colonialism and all systems of exploitation. She must understand that the fundamental problem is not the contradiction between women and men, but there is the system in which we are living." Of course, being an Asian, I cannot not remember the valor and strength of women in my continent. I will quote our keynote speaker, a very tall figure among revolutionaries in Asia, Julie de Lima. Julie states, "Subjection of women is an outgrowth of foreign and feudal domination. The struggle for women's rights is interconnected with the struggle for national freedom and democracy. Women liberate themselves from oppression and rise to a level of equality with men by participating actively in the struggle to overthrow foreign and feudal domination." The last I will speak about just Palestinians and then go on to the situation. Given the unending horrors of imperialist war in occupied Palestine, which has been going on for more than a century, there are thousands, hundreds of revolutionary women fighting for the Palestine liberation. The Popular Front for the Liberation of Palestine has a women's squad in mounting an armed struggle against the Zionists. PFLP has been represented by iconic figures like Leila Khalid and Khalda Jarrah. Both women have played a critical role in Palestinian struggle against colonization and have clearly linked class and colonization as basic structures responsible for the oppression of women. Laila Khalid states, and I quote, "When you defend humanity, you use all the means at your disposal. Some use words, some use arms, some use politics. I chose arms." And I believe that taking up arms is one of the main tools to solve this Palestinian-Israeli conflict in the interest of the oppressed and not the oppressors. A word can also be arms in a struggle. So I believe that women defend life because they are ones to bring life. So now I come to the main part. The reason I started remembering and honoring our liberation fighters is because we have now entered an era where a fierce struggle for dominance is ongoing between the world's imperialist powers, which of course, as all of us know, includes the US, China, and Russia. However, it is important to state that all imperialist powers are not equal. And the US remains the #1 imperialist power, or maybe it is much better to say it is the #1 terrorist in the world. In the current environment, the International Women's Alliance maps out 3 US global fronts of US-led war. In Eastern Europe, the target is Russia, and the militarized forces against it are harnessed to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or simply NATO. Whereas in West Asia, the major adversary is Iran, and the US has created a military front through Israel, apartheid, fully aided by Saudi Arabia and a number of other Arab countries of the region. In the Asia-Pacific, US locks horns with China and Democratic People's Republic of Korea. In the last few years, a number of security arrangements have created AUKUS, I will talk about it later, that include Australia, UK, and US, and the Quadrilateral Society Security Dialogue, Quad as it is known, which includes Japan, Australia, US, and India. As mentioned above, for the US and its Western allies, its fight in Eastern Europe is basically to take down Russia. They have harnessed a huge collaborative, corrosive military strength through the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, which of course is led by the US. It is headquartered in Belgium and was formed in 1949 to oppose the Soviet Union. At present, it has 32 members, with the US and Canada being from North America and 30 European nations, with G7, of course, being a part of the NATO membership. Its annual military budget in last year was 2.03 billion euros, which is about 2.17 billion American dollars. This is apart from the 438 billion euros of civilian budget. So we can understand how much money they use to destroy the planet. According to NATO, it is there to promote democratic values, to build trust. And it was so funny, when I was reading this. I thought it was a joke. So according to NATO, it is there to promote democratic values, to build trust, and in the long run to prevent conflict. In the long run, right? When the earth is all destroyed. To understand NATO's understanding of democratic values, we can look at NATO and US's nearly 20 years of occupation of Afghanistan, which led to more than 115,000 Afghans and 67,000 Pakistanis being killed by the NATO forces. With the US having spent $2.3 billion in the so-called war on Afghanistan, so-called war on terror in Afghanistan. One does wonder that why was NATO present in Afghanistan, as its mandate is more for it to defend its member states in the northern hemisphere. But they say in their page very blatantly, wherever we are needed, we will go. So just forget it. For this just one occupation wars of NATO, we get to understand what NATO believes in, whether NATO believes in democracy or colonialism, whether it believes in women's rights, human rights, or wars of plunder and mass killings. We also understand very clearly that the US-led imperialist forces can be moved to any part of the world at will in order to exert their hegemonic control over the world. Imperialists want dominance, especially in three major areas for maintaining hegemony. It is resources, it is markets, and cheap labor. The control of these three is coupled with securing trade routes, especially marine routes and territories. Tensions are further heightened based on the raging climate crisis, as we know, especially from Asia. That is making the fight for resources, especially land, even more brutal, as more and more areas, especially rural areas, are besieged by a number of calamities, including droughts, floods, and rising sea levels, which are taking up more land. At the same time, with fossil fuels being the basic burner for global warming, there is also a frenzied search for minerals required to operate the machinery for the so-called renewable energies. For the profit-hungry monopoly capital, energy sources are fundamental. The quest for energy sources, apart from the fossil fuels, now include rare earth metals that are a set of 17 metallic elements and include the 15 different forms of lantanides, scandium, and yttrium, as well as other metals such as lithium, cobalt, and nickel. These elements are essential to the manufacture of everything from our smartphones to our laptops to what they are calling electric vehicles, as well as power generation, healthcare, and a plethora of other products. As the imperialists war with each other, it is important to know that rare earth metals are widely dispersed on the planet. However, China is the only large-scale producer of heavy rare earth metals. The focus on alternative energies is not only the reason behind the push for mining rare earth metals. The US and China view artificial intelligence-based military technology a critical element for retaining hegemonic control over the world's territories, and these AIs or artificial intelligence technologies are also dependent on rare earth metals. There are numerous defense corporations who are advancing their artificial intelligence capabilities in aerospace and defense, which include BAE Systems, Boeing, Elbit Systems, Lockheed Martin, and others. AI is applied in various functions such as warfare systems, combat stimulation, target recognition, surveillance, reconnaissance, cyber operations, command and control, and drone swarms. The control over these resources, meaning the minerals, and of course the territories where they are found, is part of the militarism that is happening at a vast scale. An example is of the Pacific Ocean, which is now much coveted area for mineral extraction through deep sea mining. Underwater rocks known as polymetallic nodules contain cobalt, nickel, and manganese, all critical for military warfare. These mineral resources have already initiated competition among the imperialist nations, including the US and Japan. However, the US has controlled the Pacific Ocean islands since the Second World War. According to the US Special Envoy, Joseph Yuan, we control essentially the northern half of the Pacific between Hawaii and the Philippines. The Pacific Island is a hotbed of US military bases, a key base being the Marshall Islands, called the US Army Garrison Kwajalein Atoll, which supports the US Space and Missile Defense Command of Ronald Reagan Ballistic Missile Defense test sites. As you all know, I haven't written this, but there are hundreds of nuclear tests that have occurred in the Pacific. The US has a strong economic and political hold in the region by using compacts of free association with numerous Pacific Island countries. It provides them economic assistance while maintaining military control over the islands and their waters. A particular example is that these countries are not allowed to join the Treaty of Rarotonga, which would help establish nuclear-free zones in the territories. These pacts also provide the US leverage to deny other countries military access to the region. The United States 2022 National Security Strategy describes the Indo-Pacific as the epicenter of the 21st century geopolitics. The report clearly lays down the new rules of the game, highlighting the role of new military memberships in the region, such as the Quad, AUKUS, and the Five Eyes. These are basically military pacts of the US with traditional Western allies that include Australia, United Kingdom, Japan, New Zealand, and Canada, with the inclusion of India as a new strategic ally in the region. And that's why they have started calling it Indo-Pacific, and they don't want to call it Asia-Pacific anymore, because they want to emphasize the word India. Very unfortunate. Clearly, the enemy is the People's Republic of China, who, according to the US, is out to refashion the Indo-Pacific region as part of the most comprehensive and serious challenge to US national security. It's just unbelievable for us in Asia. You live so far away from here, and you tell us that their security is being threatened by China, which is thousands of miles away. At the same time, including Russia and North Korea as other enemy nations. The strategic alignment of China and Russia is a key source of the belligerent US positioning in the region. US commands the region through the US Indo-Pacific Command, US Indo-PACOM, or Indo-PACOM, one of the 6 Department of Defense Geographic Unified Combatant Command. So they have 6 posts across the globe. In Asia, it has, since September 2023, it has approximately 375,000 military and civilian personnel assigned to it, and has over 40 military sites, doesn't say bases, but that's what they are, military sites in the region. The grotesque ambitions of the US in the region are also clear from its muscle flexing by holding the 29th biannual exercise rim of the Pacific, multinational maritime exercise in the Pacific Ocean later this month, in which 29 countries, including the G7, Israel, India, South Korea, and others will be participating. The exercise is to warn off China from the Pacific waters, where China has also been extending economic and military relationships with a number of island states, particularly the Solomon Island and Vanuatu, both of which have declined to participate in the RIM Pact. Just as an aside, we would like to mention that the IWA and Resist US have launched a campaign as against RIM Pact, and more details will be shared later today. Apart from the Pacific, the US presence is very strong in Asia as well. Japan has the highest number of US bases at 175, and South Korea houses 73 US bases. No doubt, both China and North Korea being the main targets of US militarism. Another area of conflict is the South China Sea, with both China and Philippines claiming rights. Apart from being close to global marine lines and being abundantly rich in fish stocks, the Spratly Islands is a strategic position to monitor maritime activities in the area and project military power. Needless to say, imperialism views seaports as a crucial source for controlling trade, the bride around which it dances madly. According to the UN, more than 80% of trade is done via marine routes. However, ports are more than trade routes. They also mean military presence and control. According to the US, China's People Liberation Army Air Force and the People's Liberation Army Navy, there are 2 different groups, are the largest aviation force in Indochina. The PLA, meaning the People's Liberation Army of China, is considered to be the world's largest army with more than 2 million active serving personnel. However, these figures can be deceptive, as the US defense spending was $916 billion last year, while China and Russia spent $296 billion and $109 billion together, respectively. In other words, the US military spending was 44% more than the combined military spending of China and Russia. It is also higher than the 5 next highest military spenders in the world. While there is no doubt that the US remains the biggest military might globally, China is also making headway in increasing its military presence, especially in the Asia Pacific and Africa. I will skip a bit because there's only 5 minutes left. Since 2013, the Chinese have spent $1 trillion across the globe in development projects, of which $160 billion has been spent in Africa. Almost 35% of its exports from 60% of African countries are based on minerals and fossil fuels, with copper, a key mineral, being exported from Zambia. Its development aid, which has infrastructure development as a key component, is to build roads, railways, and ports to ensure a supply of energy-related minerals such as lithium, cobalt, and copper from Africa to China. So, as has been mentioned above, the US is building a web of partnerships with its allies, especially in the Middle East and Asia, to counter Chinese rapid economic partnership in the same areas. A new fascist platform has arisen in the name of IWA, which is supposed to be an economic partnership between India, Israel, USA, and United Arab Emirates. So 2 I's and 2 U's. It is a clear alliance of US imperialism. A manifestation of the partnership is a joint purchase between an Indian company, Access Limited, owned by the billionaire Adani, and an Israeli company, Gadot. This is the clear counter move against Chinese control of ports in the region. As we all know, the current genocide in Gaza is also partly based on the US ambition of ensuring the success of the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor, known as IMEC. Mimicking the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative, IMEC is a marine and land route stretching from India to United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Israel, and will be then on to the European continent. The Abraham Accords, based on which the US has been pushing normalization of relations with Arabs and other Muslim countries with apartheid Israel, is part of the dominant strategy in the MENA and Asia region. The US has been zealous in strengthening its military alliance with Arab countries as well as India, and of course Israel remains its outpost in the region. There is now a clear picture emerging of various imperialist blocs and their allies. On one side we have the US, Europe, and its satellite nations, and across the world such as Saudi Arabia, UAE, Egypt, Jordan, and Morocco, and Bahrain from the MENA region, Philippines and India in East Asia. Whereas there is closest unity between China, Russia, and Iran, while there is still uncertainty among a large subset of nations as to which direction they will take. The US is using a range of carrots and sticks to wean away countries in the Asia Pacific away from China, with Pakistan being one. Indebted nations like Pakistan and Sri Lanka are finding it very hard to survive, with many exploitative, extractive, foreign direct investment projects that are being implemented in the country by both the Chinese and the Americans and the Europeans. Whether it is for protecting Chinese or US interests, political activists are forced into silence against loss of national sovereignty, joblessness, hunger, and poverty. There are the more than 8 months horrific, brutal massacre, killing of children, women in Gaza is a clear demonstration of what the world's biggest terrorist, the United States, is capable of. But it's not a new lesson. The history of this nation, starting from the atrocities against the native Indians, Black Americans, the 2 nuclear bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, countless wars, coups are more than enough for us to understand what imperial nations are capable of unleashing on civilian populations. The righteous stand of capitalism on being the shining altar to democracy, the sham of human rights, women's rights, has all been fully exposed. Openly propagating colonialism and blatant occupation is now once more a legitimate agenda of monopoly capital. The question is, what is the lesson for us in the women's movement? Where do we go from here now that the shrine of democracy is no more there to kneel down and bow to? The framework of analysis that resonates for many of us is that the semi-colonial, semi-feudal bondage of many of our countries in the Asia-Pacific and other parts of the world. For us, it is critical to analyze the colonial bondage that our elite have with the imperialist powers, which even Saro's speech very clearly demonstrated. The neoliberal policies that are part and parcel of all economic policy making, the building of infrastructures based on public-private partnerships, privatization of all forms of public services, and murderous taxes being imposed by the IMF and other institutions of monopoly capital are the base of economic and political subjugation. They are the main cause of devastating debt and impoverishment of the masses. All these forms of subjugation of these people can only be fought back through organizing the classes which bear the major brunt of imperialism, mainly the peasantry and the workers, both in the formal and the informal sector. This is one of the most immediate, urgent tasks of the women's movement, to organize women into militant forces, formations, to fight the killing, oppression, and exploitation of neoliberal policies under capitalism. The lesson that has been relearned for us, that we had already learned in the defeat of the US in Vietnam, is that it is not the military strength of an oppressive nation that wins protracted war, but it is the ability to organize the broad masses. The steadfastness of the people to stand up and fight against regressive imperialist regimes. It is our preparedness to be able to withstand the onslaught of inhumane wars, our determination to defeat the enemy, our belief and practice in people's unity, with women's unity as a critical central core, for a world free of exploitation, injustice, class dominance, the rape of people's lives and environment that will win us our fight against imperialism. We stand at a point where imperialism has reached zenith. It can now only go down. Today, let us remember that many warrior women who have led generations of women who shook off patriarchy against colonialism, against feudalism, against capitalism. Let us walk the same path with these brave women, which these brave women took. Let us be united to affirm our militant resolve not to keep this grotesque monster called imperialism, but to be part of the people's war. Let us wholeheartedly engage in our right to fight for our rights. In summary, to win the fight for just and lasting peace for ourselves, for the generations to come, and the existence of our beautiful planet. I will say an Urdu chant. It's Samrajyat Murdabad. Samrajyat is imperialism and Murdabad is down with. So I will say Samrajyat and you guys will say Murdabad. Okay, ready? I'll say it 3 times. Samrajyat!
Murdabad!
Samrajyat!
Murdabad!